Welcome. And for those of you who are already overheating, we have asked them to turn the heating down or to turn the comfort cooling or whatever up. Welcome to this conference which celebrates 15 years of Sea Change Scotland. I say 15 years, we've celebrated for a year, so we are actually 16, but we like to party, so... The focus of today's conference is on human rights and social care, well, human rights and self-directed support more specifically. And we're going to hopefully, through real-life stories and the questions and the... Sorry, I've just developed a really dry mouth. I'm going to take a drink. I think it's the heat. It's not nerves. It's not nerves. So, through some really interesting real-life experiences and through our speakers and the opportunity to ask questions of our panel, hopefully we will leave today with an idea amongst us of how we can live and breathe human rights in relation to self-directed support. So I'll tell you a little bit about Sea Change Scotland. It started in, as I say, it was 1st of May 2001. We started with the intention of supporting people to move on from largely institutional care, and specifically at that time to work with people who had been assigned reputations for challenging services. So that's people who had been given a label, and to be honest, the 15 or now 16 years of experience says to me that really what we were talking about then and talking about now is people who are very good at discerning the quality of the support they should receive. They're people who are, you could say, great at customer feedback. If it's not good enough, you will find out about it. If you don't listen, you will find out about it again, maybe amplified. So that was the origins of the organisation, and you trip over yourself quite quickly when you do that if you fundamentally believe that if you support people well, if you listen better and work harder to design something around people, then actually those challenges should at least reduce, if not disappear altogether. So when we started, we spoke of ourselves as an organisation that worked with people who challenged the organisation, and then when you have members of your board who are these people, and you realise you can no longer talk in that way. But fundamentally, our aim has always been to design supports around people, to try and work our way out of people's lives if we can. And we have, since the inception of the organisation, used individual budgets to do that. Regardless of how the money came from the state or the individual, we regarded that money as that person's and accounted for it to the individual. We also, and it's in the name, built an expectation of change into everything we did. So whatever we did at the beginning, we didn't think we were going to be doing month on month, year on year with a person. We fundamentally believed if we did it better, then people's lives would evolve and change, and what we did needed to evolve and change alongside them. And what's informed our thinking, and even more so over the years, is a human rights-based approach. And I'm really passionate about this, so I may get excited about it. I'll try not to speak too long on it, but I would really recommend, for those of you who haven't read the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, it's not a tricky document. It is actually beautifully written. And at a time when we as a human race, really, were at our lowest ebb, having meted out atrocities upon each other, some of our best thinkers came together and said we shouldn't allow this to happen again. And therein, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, I think, is writ our better selves. So Article 1, sorry, I won't go through the whole thing. So give me a glass of red wine and I might go through the whole thing with you, but I will not go through the whole thing right now. Article 1 says, all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. They are endowed with reason and conscience and should act towards one another, in a spirit of brotherhood. I mean, what's not to like? Really? We should be teaching this stuff in school, but I'm not here to talk about education. What they also decided at the time, and we had an international agreement around, was the principles that underpin international human rights, which is their universality. They belong to all of us, everybody in the world. They are inalienable, which basically means they can't be taken away. In that respect, your values are really good. I think I'm stealing something from Judith Robertson. Values are good, rights are better, they're enforceable, and they're indivisible and interdependent. So governments, no matter what stripe, cannot select this one or that one, pick and choose what they like and what they don't like. Now, we've got a really strong context, I think, to be working with the human rights-based approach. And our Scottish Human Rights Commission promote the panel principles. And I think they're incredibly helpful for us as individuals or practitioners or organisations to consider what it is that we're doing. Panel stands for participation. Everyone has the right to participate in decisions which affect their human rights. Accountability. Similarly, we need to be accountable to each other. Non-discrimination and equality. Empowerment of right holders and legality of rights. Now, we'll hear Sandy's story later on, and there are challenges to his experience that when you look at them through a human rights-based approach, some of the things just don't stack up. So I think they are a really powerful instrument for us. We also have a really fairly well-crafted Self-Directed Support Act. The guidance for it, again, there's not much that you would disagree with. It's based on independent living, and it provides notionally 4 options for people to have greater choice and control over the way any support that they require is delivered. However, in my humble opinion, and we can talk at the break about it if you want, the transformative potential of self-directed support has not been delivered. And there was an Audit Scotland evaluation done in 2014, and they're currently undertaking a new one. And I suspect we'll find the same things repeated. It's largely that we haven't shifted the power to people. We haven't managed to bring about a culture change that actually looks at working alongside people who require additional support. I don't think we've cracked the issue of trust in the system. That's trust between funders and providers and people and the system and people. There's a lot to work on there. I don't think we have at the forefront of our engagement the preservation of and the idea of dignity writ through our practice always. And we certainly aren't unleashing the capacity among our citizens. I just look at some of the stuff that crosses my desk about how we talk about older people. We talk about people with disabilities, and we're not talking about people's gifts and skills and what they can do. We're still reducing people to what can be delivered in a service in a unit of. On occasion, not across the board and not everywhere. There is hope. And certainly there's a tendency, I think, for us to focus on a transactional approach to self-directed support, which is you have an amount of money, you divvy it up into units of, and you get that number of hours. I was going to think, if we're paid by hours to support somebody, hours of what? It could be hours of, and we don't do this, but hours of being locked in a cupboard. It's like hours to do what? The focus really needs to be on what you're achieving, what are you changing, and as Sandy's story will tell you, the most important things in your life you largely can't buy, and no one in an assessment can necessarily prescribe them for you. So, congruence. I like things to be kind of congruent. When we do planning around people, we use person-centered planning. You don't have to do flashy charts and sequence version of planning. You can plan with people through conversations, really meaningful conversations that people lead or can be guided through. But when you do person-centered planning, one of the tools you can use is PATH, Planning Alternatives Tomorrow with Hope. It's not a bad way of looking at planning. And the thing you do in that is you consider what the North Star might look like, that big vision of what would that better life really look like. And I suppose I just wondered whether we should look at, as a community of people involved in this world of self-directed support, the realisation of human rights as our North Star. We stick it up there, and we're a bit more loud and proud about saying that's it. We're aiming for that, and we use the panel principles as our guide. So when we're taking a step, do we say, does it do that? Does it engage in participation? Is the person fully involved? Is it empowering? Are we accountable? And I suspect if we tried to use something like that, it would just guide our practice. And it's something we can all enrol in, which is another step on a path. You enrol, you say, yeah, I can do that. And I suppose if we were taking anything away from the end of today, it would be the idea that you think, yeah, I can do that. I can enrol in applying those panel principles, applying that thinking to my work. So, but we'll see by the end of the day if that's how you feel about it. And we have, I've said before, a national context that actually supports this endeavour. We have the Human Rights Act, so the ECHR, we have the Scotland Act. We haven't incorporated the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, so again I think that's something that we should be trying to promote, that and the Convention on the Rights of the Child, and CEDAW for that matter. There's lots of them, but there's more we could do to strengthen that legal framework. The Scottish Government has worked hard at putting human rights, threading human rights through our policy frameworks, and as recently as I think it was last week, the Care Inspectorate have released their new standards, and I'll have to put my specs on for this one, but I do believe the first one says, oh yeah, it is up there, my human rights are respected and promoted. So it's there in the ether. It's how we make it tangible, how we make it real. And I think we as practitioners, we as organisations, we as citizens can actually be more powerful around this. We need to kind of own it. We need to go, actually, universal human rights, they're mine. They're indivisible. You can't take them off me. But we need to understand them. So, I'm trying to keep to my time here. I've got my phone. I'm a terrible one for gabbing. So I've got my phone telling me I have got less than a minute. So, in summary, what do we need to do? We need to stop thinking that more is better around self-directed support. And again, I think Sandy's story will tell you, more money is not necessarily the answer. Now, I am not talking about stripping support away from people who don't have enough to be able to get out of their bed in the morning or get back into their bed at night. That's not what I'm talking about. But we have odd things in our system that mean that some people who really don't appreciate the support they're getting get more than they want of that support they don't really want. It's an odd thing. So more is not necessarily better, and we shouldn't assume that it is. We need to try and keep it simple, keep our language around this simpler. Human rights law for me does not reside with lawyers. And I'm sorry, Kathy. Hold on. We've got Twinkle Twinkle Little Star going on here. I thought I put it on silent, but no. Oh, I'll give it to someone. I know my limitations. We need to keep it. See, we need to keep it simple. Human rights for me does not sit with lawyers. It doesn't sit with our legal teams. It sits with us. And we need to exercise it and use it. We need to feel more confident in it. And in that respect, we are all experts. I don't believe this. Was it Michael Gove said we don't need experts? I don't believe that. Actually, we need more experts. We need to listen to experts in their own lives, people who have their own lived experience. I also would hope that we would all become a little bit more expert in understanding what human rights mean for us, and not think it's about not being able to extradite our terrorist. That's the very least of it. And more than anything else, human rights and self-directed support is about being human. It's about relationships. The rest of it is the stuff that we have to kind of get through. But if we stop listening to people and seeing the potential in people, then we'll never make it happen. We have to get back to those real basics. It's about being human.